Thank you very, very much for coming. My name is Dan Knuckles. I'm a professor at Austin College. I'm very happy to be moderating this event, which is code for staying out of the way. Today, we have with us Russell Baining, Judy Borlak, Stephen Drucker, and Howard Binger. And they're going to be talking about different aspects of the GMO debate. I'm going to first ask them to briefly introduce themselves, a little bit about their background, and I think one or two have decided on an opening statement. But again, thank you very, very much for coming. We're going to try to leave some time at the very end for some questions and answers, so please keep those in mind. And so we'll get started right now. 45 minutes is going to fly by, but thank you again for coming.
My name is Stephen Drucker. I'm a public interest attorney and the executive director of the Alliance for Biointegrity. In 1998, I've initiated a lawsuit against the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that forced it to divulge its files on genetically engineered foods. That revealed that politically influenced administrators had covered up the extensive warnings of their own scientists about the extraordinary risks, misrepresented the facts, and then broken federal food safety law by allowing all of these foods onto the market without requiring that they be demonstrated safe through standard testing. I'm also the author of the book Altered Genes, Twisted Truth, How the Venture to Genetically Engineer Our Food Has Subverted Science, Corrupted Government, and Systematically Deceived the Public. It was released last year with praise from numerous scientists and a foreword by Jane Goodall, hailing it as without doubt one of the most important books of the last 50 years.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Howard Vlieger. I'm a third generation family farmer. I live on the farm I was born and raised on. I became a student of the soil in 1989. Since 1992, I've been a crop and livestock nutrition advisor. I'm privileged to work with family farmers all across the United States and Canada. And I have seen the real life effects of genetically engineered crops and the chemicals that are used in growing them from ground level. I'm privileged to work with scientists and researchers from around the world on the problems that are caused by GMOs. I am the primary coordinator and first co-author of a lifetime feeding study where we fed non-GMO corn and soy and GMO corn and soy to pigs for their lifetime as a meat animal. And that study was published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. Thank you.
First, I have to say howdy. Howdy from the Aggies. I see a bunch of Aggies out there. I'm Julie Borlak. I'm the Associate Director for the Borlak Institute at Texas A&M University, and I also work for Corporate Relations and our AgriLife Research at Texas A&M. I am here because I care about the 3.1 million children who die every year due to hunger-related issues, and the 25,000 who will die today. So that is why I'm here. I've had the privilege of going to India, to sub-Saharan Africa, to rural Kenya, and meeting with the farmers, the female farmers, and talking to them about the hardships they have and how we can use innovation and technology. So I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell Baining. I'm part of a family farming operation that's right south of San Antonio, about 35 miles southeast of San Antonio. My family's farmed there my entire life. I'm a fourth generation farmer on the same ground. We farm all different types of crops. Some are GMO crops, some are not GMO crops. We also operate a dairy and a beef operation. I'm also president of Texas Farm Bureau, which is the largest ag organization in the state of Texas. We represent farmers and ranchers across the entire state. We represent growers that are what we call conventional growers, or they use GMO products. Some do not. We represent organic growers. I'm here because we look at GMO and any type of engineering technology like that as essential to our industry. We think it's just part of things that we need, as many other aspects of our life need different types of technology. We think it's an important part of agriculture and sustainable agriculture. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Starting with Russell. Russell, could you tell us maybe your strongest argument for or against GMOs?
Yes, sir, Mr. Knuckles. As I said, I'm part of a farming operation that's actually been, my grandfather started farming some of the same ground that we farm. He started farming in 1930. I was lucky enough to farm with my grandfather for many years. And of course, my dad is still active in our operation. GMOs have become an important part of our operation. They're not the only important part of our operation, but they have become an important part of it. It's a good mix. My grandfather we farmed the same ground that my grandfather started farming in 1930. And we've added to it, of course. We have several families that are in the operation. So GMOs have been a part of a succession, I guess you could say. I remember my grandfather telling about hybrid seed corn, synthetic fertilizers, all technologies that have helped us and helped our operations. I've seen what they've done on our own farm. Farming ground that my grandfather farmed in 1930. We've taken corn and cotton yields. We've pretty much gone 8 times to what they produced then. I see sustainability, both economic sustainability and environmental sustainability. So it's an important part for our operation, and I think it's important for our industry.
Thank you very much. Julie, same question.
So we're all here for Earth Day. So we are here to be more sustainable, and we know we have climate change. Without using technologies like GMOs, we are not going to be able to answer how we're going to handle the droughts, the erratic weather problems, and how we can be more sustainable. A lot of people don't know that we have GMOs, and that's genetically modified organisms, just in case anyone was wondering. And we have drought-tolerant technology in our corn, which is not only important because if you look at the lack of rain many parts of the Midwest had last year, it's also important to the female farmer in sub-Saharan Africa who may not get the rain that she was looking at or the forecast that she was hoping for. And it's a life or death situation for her on how much she's going to produce. If you look at inputs, we all want less inputs, less fertilizer, less pesticides, less insecticides. We can do that with genetically modified technology. We are already doing that. So I think if you care about hunger, you care about sustainability, you're concerned about climate change, you have to be about utilizing every system and every technology. That's all the way from organic, all the way to genetically modified. And I think, one thing I've seen when I've been able to go to developing countries and meet with the farmers and understand the hardships. I mean, they are farming in the systems that we did in the 1890s, and why is this allowable? And their children aren't educated, they're stunted because they haven't had the benefit of technology. And I think we can't be anti-hunger in this day and age and anti-technology.
Thank you very much. Howard, what are your arguments for and pro GMO?
Well, I have, as I said, I've been a student of soil since 1989. And using alternative farming methods, I looked at things a lot differently than others did. I see a lack of education as a huge problem. And the reason why so many farmers have become dependent on genetically engineered crops. In my opinion, the number one reason for genetically engineered crops is money. In North America, just the technology fees that are collected on the genetically engineered crops that are grown annually, that generates approximately $8 billion worth of technology fees. That's why there's so many people that are willing to stand up and promote GMOs, because there's so much money behind it. You want to talk about sustainability? Look at regenerative agriculture implementing cover crop systems and improving soil health that enable you to not only survive but thrive through drought conditions. And the quality of the crop is far superior to anything that's genetically engineered. The genetically engineered crops, 80% of them are herbicide tolerant. There's a large percentage of them that are registered as an actual pesticide. The herbicide tolerance, the number one herbicide used worldwide is a glyphosate-based herbicide. They're finding glyphosate residue in literally everything, and it is not safe. Glyphosate is a very strong chelator, tying up numerous nutrients, and it's a very potent antibiotic. It is causing disruption to the microflora in the soil, in the microflora in the digestive system of the animals, and in the microflora of the people. And the rapid increase we've seen on numerous diseases in the United States of America can be tracked back to genetically engineered crops and these herbicides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Drucker?
There are many very strong arguments against the use of GMOs. I think probably one of the biggest is they entail abnormal and inescapable risks. And the reason the risks are inescapable is they are an inherent aspect of the genetic engineering process itself. Now, this important fact has been recognized by many independent expert scientists, including the experts on the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Biotechnology Task Force, the Public Health Association of Australia, which recently called for a complete ban on genetically engineered foods until much more extensive testing had demonstrated them to be safe. And also the Royal Society of Canada, which released a major report concluding that the default presumption, and that was their words, default presumption for any genetically engineered food is that it has undergone disruptions that could have led to potentially harmful side effects. Now, there is extensive evidence that also backs up this conclusion, and there have been a large number of studies, well-conducted studies, published in peer-reviewed scientific literature that have detected statistically significant harm to the unfortunate laboratory animals that were fed the genetically engineered food. I do also think it's important to respond to points that Julie made. Julie, I definitely appreciate and respect your dedication to improving the world and to solving the problems of hunger wherever they do, and I share that. I know Howard does. But I think it's very important to note that there have been extensive studies conducted on the future of farming and the needs of the third world, and they have concluded that genetic engineering isn't necessary. For instance, in 2008, a major study was released that was co-sponsored by the World Bank and 4 United Nations agencies. More than 400 scientists in more than 80 countries around the world participated in that. It's been endorsed by over 58 governments. And that study concluded that genetic engineering did not have a significant role to play in meeting the world's future food needs. In fact, it was very clear on that. And when the study's director was asked at a press conference whether GE crops were the answer to world hunger, he replied, quote, "The simple answer is no." Now, also, it's important to note that there's a UN report that was released by its Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food. It reviewed 114 farming projects in 24 African countries and determined that through adoption of organic or near-organic practices, yields had increased on average more than 100%. That means more than doubled. And another report by the Special Rapporteur stated that in 44 projects in 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa using agroecological sustainable techniques, yields increased 214% over a period of 3 to 10 years, and he noted that is far more than any GM crop has ever been able to do.
Thank you. Julie, you indirectly mentioned the carrying capacity of the earth, and I think, go ahead.
Okay, is this on? So I could sit here and give you about 50,000 more studies than his 300 or his 400, but I'm not going to throw facts at you because you all have Google. But when you do look at a study, please look that it is a neutral study. It needs to be those for GMOs and against GMOs. You always need to have a neutral fact-based study. The other thing is, we cannot talk about zero risk when we're talking about science. You get vaccinated, there's a risk there might be an allergic reaction. You take a medicine, there's a risk. Who drove here today? That's probably the biggest risk you take in your life every day. So we can't have a zero risk conversation. And you know, those who are starving don't have time to debate zero risk and don't have time to debate all of these sides. I think what I really stand for is utilizing every production system, organic, conventional, GMO. When we get to synthetic biology, let's utilize everything. I don't know how I, sitting here in the United States, who has the abundance of food, whether I walk into Whole Foods or Walmart and buy cheaply, that I can make a life and death decision about a child that should be banned from using anything like golden rice. Does everyone know what golden rice is? It's a vitamin A type of rice, a fortified, that helps in Asia with blindness. 500,000 children die annually of vitamin A deficiency, and hundreds, thousands go blind as well. We have the technology. Okay, you can have a moment, you may have a moment, but this isn't about anger for and against. This is about solving world hunger, coming to the middle, and making sure 3.1 million children aren't dying today. So the study that I was referring to, we have the rice. It's actually sitting on a shelf, and it was done by a nonprofit organization, Monsanto, Pioneer. No one owns it. Those who bar it, I would like you to go speak to the mother and explain when it's been proven safe and effective. And I want you to tell that mother why it's okay her child died and why it's okay that child's blind. Because in the end, it's all about choice. If it's been proven safe and effective, every farming technique is about choice, and we cannot ban any one farmer. Texas farmers cannot tell Washington State farmers what they should do. It's different growing population, growing situations, it's different soils, it's all of those things. So we all have to remember, this is not an anti-for or against. We're not gonna get anywhere. Why are we spending hundreds of millions of dollars on fancy PR campaigns against anti-GMO? Why aren't we looking for alternatives and solutions to feed? Don't just be anti-hunger and then anti-GMO. Be for a solution. Come to the middle, say we are against this, but here is our solution, and it actually can be used to feed the world. So that's really where I stand. So when you throw all these facts and you scare people, you're actually doing damage to those who are hungry. And why this is a religion is beyond me. This is about saving people's lives.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Thank you. So I'll circle back to you in just a moment. Howard, I think you would like to respond as Stephen.
There is more than enough food in the world today to feed 12 billion people. Golden rice is in the Philippines in the development stages. There's a very simple reason why it is not on the market, and it's not due to the scare tactic and political pressure. The developers know it will not perform agronomically. If the industry is so concerned about feeding poor people, and they're wanting to increase yield and improve nutrient content, why haven't they done it? They have focused on herbicide tolerance and pesticides in insecticidal characteristics in the genetically engineered crops that are generating the massive technology freeze and the control over the seed. That is what they care about more than feeding the hungry people in the third world countries.
had his hand. Stephen, go ahead, and I'll come right back with you.
Yes. Julie, you know, I think there's a fallacy in your argument. You're saying, don't give out facts and scare people. The problem is the proponents of genetically engineered foods have demonstrated they're afraid of the facts. You know, the facts are the facts. We're talking about science. I'm in favor of science. I'm in favor of upholding federal food safety law. It's not a matter of eliminating all risk. You can't. Every food entails risk. Every technology entails risk. The idea is we don't want to subject people to unreasonable risks. And the scientists at the FDA concluded that unless every genetically engineered food goes through standard testing to demonstrate it's safe, it would be exposing population to unreasonable risks. The FDA administrators covered all of that up and lied about it, and that's a solid fact. It's well documented. Now, just to add to what Howard said about the golden rice, it's not sitting on the shelves. It has yet to be commercialized because they haven't been able to develop one that will deliver enough golden rice. And also, it has not been proven safe. There haven't been any safety tests done on that rice. So it's important to have the facts correct. And I fully agree with you. I think we should be communicating. I would love to initiate a dialogue with you afterwards because you're an important person and you're a good-hearted person, you're an intelligent person, and you're the kind of person I'd like to deal with. And I think we can have an intelligent discussion. But it has to be fact-based and it has to be science-based.
Thank you. Mr. Bainey, sorry, go right ahead.
I guess just a couple of points, and I'll just second what Julie said a few minutes ago about the studies. We can quote studies for a lot longer than 45 minutes. Go ahead and get on Google, check out all the studies. They're right. There's studies out there that say GMOs aren't safe. There are studies that say that. There's many, many more independent studies that say they are safe. Other than that, corporations were mentioned. Money was mentioned. So we're, I guess there is the 7-letter word in the room, so to speak, is probably Monsanto. And, corporations do make money. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, they have to make money when they bring these products to market. I don't really worry about whether Monsanto makes money. I worry about whether my farm is economically sustainable. I worry about whether folks in my industry are economically sustainable. So when we start talking about the money, yeah, I guess economics is important, but it's important because it's sustainable. And I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just reminding the audience that we're going to leave about 10 minutes at the end for question and answer, so please be cognizant of that. And again, thank you all for coming. So I think it's safe to say that the audience would be very interested in each of you commenting on the debate over food labeling, GMO labeling on food products. So Howard, you want to start that?
Well, the debate is, do we label or don't we label? I'm a conservative Christian Republican Tea Party member, and I believe that a very fundamental right is to know what I'm eating. They say there's no difference between a genetically engineered crop and a non-genetically engineered crop. If that's the case, why do they patent them? If genetically engineered crops develop on their own, which they claim, thousands of years, and we have plant progressions, but we have never seen a Roundup Ready crop come out of nature, nor have we seen a BT crop come out of nature. The independent studies that are not funded through research grants at universities or by the industry have always shown cause for reasons for concern on the safety and the health of a genetically engineered crop. Even industry-funded studies. The example I would use is Monsanto's study on the NK603 corn. Their own study showed reason for damage to the liver because of the blood test results. There is an escalating health crisis amongst the young in our country. I have been privileged to go all over this country and talk about the issues related to genetically engineered crops. The mothers that get it clean the diet of their children of the GMOs and also the chemical residues from the GMOs, and the health improves in their children. Why would you not want to give a label so people have the choice to choose?
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to add some comments?
Yes, I fully agree with Howard that people do have the right to know what's in their food, especially if a very radical change has been made through genetic engineering. But there's a much deeper right. There's an even deeper right here in the US, and it's been granted by federal statute since 1958. And that's the right not to be exposed to untested food additives in the first place. And that right has been violated by our own Food and Drug Administration. So these labeling is actually a secondary issue. If a food is illegally on the market, the proper remedy is not to stick a label on it, it's to take it off the market. And unfortunately, every one of these genetically engineered foods has come to market in this country illegally. Every one of them sits on supermarket shelves in violation of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and they should be taken off the market as soon as possible, and none should be let back on the market unless and until it has gone through the kind of testing that Congress intended and that the executive branch has been thwarting that kind of testing. We really need to have it fully understood what's going on and what has been happening and how our laws, our food safety laws, have been blatantly violated by the very federal agency that's responsible for enforcing them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vining, would you?
Yeah, on the labeling issue, there's a couple of points I'd like to make. First off, you already have a choice. If you want a non-GMO product, there are organic products out there that they're labeled certified organic, they're non-GMO. There's about 25,000 plus different food products that have been voluntarily labeled as non-GMO. As an agriculturalist, I worry a little bit about when we go down that road of mandatory labeling with GMOs for the exact reason that was just pointed out by Mr. Drucker. Is it really that we want the GMOs labeled, or is it that we don't want the GMOs, period? And a technology that's been proven safe, that does worry me. And then if we do get a label, which I understand when people start saying they want to know what's in their food. I totally get that. But when we go down that road and then we get one study that says it may be carcinogenic, okay, does that go on the label then? You know, it goes back to what was said earlier. There is a small amount of risk in everything. There's a small amount of risk in organic food. There's a small amount of risk in any food. And I think you have to look at the studies. So I worry about, number one, I think there's a way that if you really, really want non-GMO food, you can already find it. And then if we go down the mandatory labeling route, I worry about, well, what's next? Thank you.
Julie, go ahead.
You know, I understand why people care what's in their food. I think we all do. So I'm just so tired of this and so tired of the money that's going into these campaigns on either side. I'd rather it actually go to research and development, whether here in the United States or abroad, to actually save people and create a healthier food system. So label it. Let's move it on, because everything you're eating's been GMO for 20 years. I think it's unfair, because everything else should be added. But I think we also need to know what GMO is not an additive. It is not an additive, it is not a dye, it is not a chemical, it is not processed food. So when you clean a diet, when you go to a fresh food, only fresh food, and you stay away from the boxed and the frozen aisles, you are gonna be healthier. I eat fresh foods. I am healthier than if I ever ate macaroni and cheese. So there is nothing that has to do with an additive in a GMO. Additives need, and I'm not going to debate this because I'd like to move on to more substantive questions, but I just think we need to understand a little more about what a GMO truly is versus an additive versus a chemical and a dye. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion is on labeling. But I'm all for, let's just label it, let's move on, and let's have a national standard. So every state is not, has erratic different standards, and it's not actually affecting the consumer when they check out.
Okay, I think it's safe to say that you guys have made some very important responses, and that's due to some good questions. So Julie, would you go ahead and ask what you think to be a substantive question of each of the panelists, and I'll let you take the lead.
I think with all the money that goes into the anti-side, just to sue each other and to do social media and all of that type of outreach, what is your actual solution? You have stood here and said you do not like GMOs, you're anti. You're not open to an array of systems if GMO is a part of it. So instead of just saying over and over, no, 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 give the people a solution.
I noted a solution that was strongly recommended by that massive study co-sponsored by the World Bank and the United Nations, in which 400 scientists, experts from around the world participated. It's been endorsed by 58 countries, Julie, and they stated what is needed for the developing world is not GMOs. They were very clear on that. What is needed is sustainable agroecological techniques. They are best suited for small-scale agriculture in the third world. That was their solution.
But what are you doing to support that solution?
Just a moment. And I'm willing to go with that. That's the science. Those were independent experts. And I also have to correct you that genetic engineering adds things to the food. And it wedges conglomerates of DNA that have never existed in nature before. It's not a simple process like you've been led to believe. And the FDA has admitted that unless those additives, the substances added to the GMOs, are generally recognized as safe, they are food additives. Now, the FDA claims they're generally recognized as safe, but it knows they're not. Its own files demonstrate that it knew as of May of 1992, when it issued its presumption they're generally recognized as safe, that they weren't. In fact, one of the damning pieces of evidence was a letter written by the FDA's own biotechnology coordinator to a Canadian health official admitting that there was not general recognition of safety of these foods in the scientific community at large. And it knew full well that the overwhelming consensus of its own scientists was these foods cannot be regarded as safe, that they do entail higher risks, okay? Higher risks. And again, every food entails some risk, but the question is it an unreasonable risk? And in the case of GMOs, the FDA's own scientists felt it's high enough to require testing. That's what the law requires as well. So we have to be very clear about what the facts are. And what I recommend is that we follow the sound science, we follow the best law, we follow the best thinking of independent experts, and that means we know we don't need genetic engineering to meet the needs of the third world. Here's some other facts. I know you don't want me quoting facts, but I can't resist. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, Howard's really referred to this, we already produce more than enough food to feed 14 billion people, and there are only 7 billion right now. Another fact is, a USDA report in 2014, this is USDA, US Department of Agriculture, it stated, and this is a quote, over the first 15 years of commercial use, genetically engineered seeds have not been shown to increase yield potentials. In fact, the yields of herbicide-tolerant or insect-resistant seeds may occasionally be lower than conventional varieties.
Okay,
Close
Stephen,
quote.
thank you. I want to go ahead and get going here. I want to give other panelists a chance to make one kind of concluding comment, then we're going to go to Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Knuckles. Just addressing Mr. Drucker's last statement, the yields are better, period. The yields are better. The yields are better on our farm. I've talked to many producers, and to say that the yields are not better, that's simply wrong. It's simply wrong. The yield, not only are the yields better, but and we talk a lot about pesticides. We talk about climate change. We were at a thing here last night that talked about climate change, and the carbon footprint is tremendous. I didn't even mention that earlier. Is so much smaller when we use GMO products. I mean, there's so fewer trips across the field, and the yields are better. And we produce a lot of food because there's a lot of GMO corn and soybeans produced in this country, folks. The vast majority is GMO corn and GMO soybeans. So it has helped the industry. It has helped individual farmers. Thank you.
I think Howard will finish. Julie, did you want to make one more statement? Okay. Howard?
There are two studies that looked at the yield factor. The intrinsic yield has not increased as a result of genetic engineering. Yields have gone up, there's no question about that, but it's because of the improvement in hybrids that are then genetically engineered. I've been in the seed business since 1984. I was in the seed business from 84 to 2010, I should say. I saw seed companies pull the top performing hybrids from the conventional non-GMO market and only allowed them to go out as a traded hybrid. They were stacking the deck. Yields have not gone up as a result of GMO. They've gone up because of hybrid plant breeding and development. What are we going to do different to feed the world? There are programs that have been started by farmers and supported by ground level USDA people. I talked to one of them down here at the USDA booth today on soil health, regenerative agriculture with cover crops, and growing your nutrition. The problem is our so-called land-grant universities are focused on chemical-intensive agriculture. They won't help spread the knowledge that's needed for farmers to be successful with the regenerative program. You're not dependent on the fertilizer and chemical man 24/7, 365 in a regenerative agriculture program. You're able to improve soil health, get rid of chemical residue in the soil, improve drought capabilities for the crop, and vastly improve the nutrient density of the crop. But it doesn't put money in corporation pockets like the gentleman would like to see. Sustainability worldwide, those people in the third world countries need the knowledge to feed themselves. They don't need seed that costs $150 per bag more. Thank you.
Before I get to announce it, Mr. Drucker will be back here at 5 o'clock to discuss some other items. So Q&A, anyone have a question? Okay. I'm going to go to this gentleman over here first, and I'll come to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the presentations. A couple of comments before the question. What I hear is about money. But money to make profits for producing crops, money to oppose the GMOs. If I ask you individually, you make a lot of money in suing GMOs. You make a lot of money traveling around selling books against GMOs. The gentleman makes a lot of money working the land, producing crops. Now, I have traveled around the world in my job. I've been to India, I've been to Turkey, I'm from South America. There are many practices in agriculture. There are many ways of improving. It's not only in the United States that research is being done. In South America, there are different practices on irrigation, on planting. The same thing is done in Turkey, the same thing is in India, where irrigation is more a problem than some of these issues. But during this discussion, the only approach to the definition of GMO was very, very done by a very nice lady. Very simple. We discuss about good things, bad things. Nobody here heard the definition of a GMO is. Nobody here heard about the evolution of plants, that there is a continual evolution of genetics in plants and animals and what we eat in ourselves. Nobody has talked about the impact on genetics and the diseases. Nobody has mentioned a study of how the impact of GMOs are compared to impact on genetics. So my question is, why don't we spend our effort in more research? Why don't we decrease the tone of this controversy? I'm free to eat what I want. Why don't people are free to eat without being preached in the name of religion, in the name of politics? I hear Christianity, Republican Party doesn't have anything to do with food.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond first because, before you start insulting somebody saying that they're basically just making money from what they're doing, I haven't made any money suing the FDA. I went into the hole financially for doing that. I largely financed that myself, okay? And the amount of money I have made on my book so far does not begin to compensate for the time I've spent since 1996. If I'd stayed practicing law in the large firm that I used to be in, I'd be way ahead monetarily. I'm doing this for different reasons than money, and you insulted me unjustly. You also don't understand what's in my book. Your claim that somehow GMOs are just a natural extension of evolution, my book goes into that in great detail. We don't have time in this format to go into all of that. I highly recommend, if you actually care about the science and the facts, read my book, and then those questions will be answered for you. But it's very important to understand, and I haven't mentioned, Howard mentioned the profits, I haven't at all. I'm not mentioning that. I've talked about the unusual risks of these foods that has been well recognized by the FDA scientists, the Royal Society of Canada, the Public Health Association of Australia, and hundreds of other independent scientists who don't have a financial stake in this issue and who are just trying to sort out the facts from the propaganda and base their decisions on sound science.
In reference to the money, the industry that promotes GMOs and the Grocery Manufacturers Association, and the industry, by the way, that promotes GMOs, the majority of the companies that produce GMOs.
Switch mics. There you go.
The majority of the companies that produce the GMO crops are, coincidentally, many of them are in the pharmaceutical and chemical business, so they have a lot of money. There has not been that much money spent in the efforts to acquire the labeling. The massive amount of money has been spent to stop the labeling. So that's coming from your side. So if you can get them to stop, that would be great. Again, to reiterate what Stephen said, this is not a natural process that's occurred with a genetically engineered crop. I've been privileged to work with Dr. Arpad Pusztai, and he was the first scientist in the world to do a true scientific independent study on a genetically engineered crop. And when he went into that study, he firmly believed in this technology, that it was beneficial. And what he saw was so devastating to the health of those lab animals because of the foreign proteins that are generated with every genetically engineered crop that is made, and the potential for that protein to be totally uncontrolled and totally unpredictable. It was a direct assault to the immune system of every mammal that could consume an ingredient from this genetically engineered crop. The correct and proper way to address a scientific study that you don't agree with is to repeat it and prove the study wrong with different results. That was never done with Dr. Pusztai's study. The so-called safety studies that they claim we have an abundant amount of have never been set up to really find out safety in most cases. The best example of summarizing the industry safety studies is when our pig study was published, I got a call that day from an editor from the Chicago Tribune, and she says, how do you respond to the comment from the such and such a gentleman from the Biotech Institute that says, Well, we don't understand why they looked at the stomachs and the utera of the pigs in their study, because our safety studies show there's no difference in feed conversion or rate of gain. Well, guess what? If you're only looking at feed conversion and rate of gain, you're not going to find anything wrong with the health of the animals in the study. So it's not the same, it's drastically different. And anybody says it's not about money, just sit down and add up all the technology fees every year. And if they really wanted to help the people in the starving third world countries, donate them technology fees to giving those people food. But more importantly, don't give them fish, teach them how to fish. And these programs of regenerative agriculture with mulch and cover crop and using nature and working with it instead of working against it are good for the people, but they're not good for agribusiness chemical companies.
Hi, yes.
We got about 30 seconds left. So.
Sure. My question's for Julie. You were talking about how GMOs are saving the world, saving world hunger, but I just wasn't really understanding specifically how they're actually doing that now, because it's actually unanimously understood that GMOs are actually all going towards biofuels and feeding cattle. And they're actually not going towards feeding people yet. You can't actually go into a grocery store and buy genetically modified corn, because the only way you're actually getting it is in the derivative concentrated form in high fructose corn syrup, soy lecithin. So if it's going towards cars and gasoline and feeding animals, I'm not really understanding how it's helping us. And just the second part to that question is, you mentioned India and these other parts of the world where it's helping people, but what you failed to mention is the fact that 250,000 Indian farmers have killed themselves over these issues and have actually drank the pesticides that they're buying in tandem with these crops to kill themselves. So I'm not really understanding how that's helping people.
Let me help you. First of all, I was in India in 2006, and guess what all the farmer suicides were due? To the middleman who owned the farm, and the poor farmer was so in debt and ashamed, he killed himself. So I think there's a lot of mixed up beliefs about GMOs and farmers. First of all, when you're in rural Africa, you can't go into a store and buy corn. But we have genetically modified, and we're working on genetically modified maize and other things that will deal with drought tolerant technology. We have to have that, and we're working on that right now with the Gates Foundation and many others with the CG system in Africa right now. I have never said, nor do I believe, genetic modification is a silver bullet. It is not. It is not going to feed the world. Every system is going to feed the world. But when your soils are depleted and you've been doing it organically since the beginning of time, you're going to have to change up. You're going to have to use inputs and fertilizers. You are going to have to regenerate your soils. People don't realize there's not a lot of cover crops developed in India for a farmer that owns 2 hectares. It's not possible. They can't use the manure of their cattle because their livestock's starving. So we have to be a little more realistic when we're talking about Western, more developed agriculture versus the undeveloped world. And I think, I just think it's all about choice. And I think we don't have a right as a wealthy world to take that choice away from any one person. And you know, I'm not saying you can't do organic, okay? I'm not doing that. But you can't do the same on the other side. So that is my only thing. And when people think genetic modification and other advanced technologies are too advanced for the developing world, look what they did with the phones. Look in Africa. They didn't build landlines, they jumped directly to the mobile phone. And if you look at banking in Kenya, there are no banks. It's actually done on the mobile network. So there is no technology too advanced for the farmer, whether developed or underdeveloped. And I wish we'd gotten into precision agriculture today, because that's really exciting, especially here in the United States. But I just think we need to remember it's always about choice, and all systems are going to have to be utilized.
Would you help me thank the panelists? Thank you for coming.